good evening everyone. My name is Afika and I will be your MC for today. We would like to offer our sincere gratitude to everyone present here for taking time out of your day to attend this session. Before we continue to the presentation, here is a short video before we continue.
Valuable or vulnerable, precious or priceless, and to secure the most essential elements in our connected world. There are many reasons we choose to protect things. Because they're valuable or vulnerable, precious or priceless. And to secure the most essential elements in our connected world, we rely on cybersecurity professionals certified by ISC². Their proven expertise helps safeguard the data and technology that offer us access and convenience, and shields the lives we want to lead. In a world worth protecting, Squared is there.
Okay, and now without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Hu Chuan Wei on stage to present his presentation.
Hey, hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chuan Wei. Just give me a minute and I'll bring up my screen. Okay. Hello again. My name is Chuan Wei, and today I'm representing ISC² Asia Pacific to deliver the topic adapting to the changing risk landscape through a risk-based cybersecurity model. My full-time job is Chief Information Security Officer at ST Engineering in Singapore. Now, today's session will examine what information security practitioners need to look out for when developing their tactical and strategic plans to address cyber risks in a changing risk landscape. A common approach is to adopt a risk-based methodology, but there are some prerequisites to ensure that one doesn't end up missing components. Now, this session will try to cover pitfalls, common mistakes, and steps to make it work from a practitioner perspective. Due to time limit, I will be sharing only the key points. Okay. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the current state of affairs. Now, to kick off, we all know that the risk landscape is always changing. And in my view, the current pandemic has definitely made it worse. The pandemic has caused IT and business to focus on keeping their business running at the expense of information and cybersecurity. Now, business had to adopt and adapt to a new way of working with the sudden announcement of lockdowns in cities and countries. IT also had to rush to implement technologies for staff to work from home. Now, during this transition, we do not know if security controls were assessed and catered for. A balance of productivity versus security. One of the most important factors to ensure business continuity while working from home or remotely is the VPN. Now, while were this measure implemented with the security in mind or a new solution stacked on a vulnerable environment? Our patch management still being carried out diligently. We also experience a new old problem, the supply chain security. The recent SolarWinds sharing reminded us not to be complacent and simply trust all the software we received. Now, question like, will a code review being conducted? Will the code inspected for integrity? Or basically, did we take it for granted or we missed something along the way? Now, if you look at the current environment, we all understood that security is as strong as the weakest link, and human is always the weakest link. And the bad guys are exploring that link as well. Way before the pandemic, phishing email has been the common tactic used by the bad guys for the initial entry into corporate networks. Now, with the pandemic, when the pandemic struck, there was a rise in the phishing emails on the topic of COVID-19 and vaccination, which attracted a lot of users. to trigger undesirable outcome. Example, stealing of credentials, spreading of ransomware, and extortion for data stolen and exfiltrated. Now, this cyber incident clearly shows how good and smart are the bad guys. Some of the phishing emails we saw were so realistic during the height of the pandemic that a user was not able to tell the difference. Now, everyone just wanted to know the latest of the pandemic, that information security and cyber security were put aside. So, did we assess if the pandemic could have brought in waves of cyber attack? Would be the question that we're asking. Did we reassess our risk profile to see if our current controls were still fit for purpose? Right? Again, did we take it for granted or miss something along the way when it comes to timely information security education and training? Well, you look at obviously the worst had happened. Controls were bypassed, and it clearly shows some controls were no longer fit for purpose. Uh, some of the detailed studies into ransomware attacks clearly demonstrated the delay in reacting with updates and patches. Some of the ransomware were fileless and were running off registry and in memory. The industry was definitely caught by surprise with some of the more well-known ransomware attacks, example Maze, Red Evil, and etc. Now, attack groups are coming out with new variants more frequently to evade detection, and security research will take more time and effort to reverse engineer the malware strains. Now, research not able to keep up with the pace of the attack group, and security detection and prevention tools are missing out on detecting these new malware signatures. Some of the businesses are still having the notion that the endpoint control, for example, the antivirus software, is good enough to protect the business, and they believe they are lucky and will not suffer a cyber attack. Now, as mentioned in the previous slide, organizations are not keeping up with the bad guys as they are learning the same know-how, if not even better. One example will be the Maze ransomware group. They have since shut down their operation in November 2020. But what was interesting is their modus operandi. There are literatures that will dissect the Maze ransomware and how it works. Some of the attributes of the Maze ransomware attacks are poor admin account usage control and poor patch management. Good control will be to implement the 2FA, if not multi-FA. Now, the shutdown of Maze ransomware group last year does not mean that it is the end of ransomware attack. During the pandemic, there were several bad guys that jumped on the ransomware bandwagon to create their own ransomware variants and use the same techniques to encrypt and extort. A good example would be the one that we hit the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack from the dark side attack group. Now, to date, there are more than 27 ransomware groups that are active, and the biggest ransom asked to date is $15 million US. And unfortunately, some of the ransom were paid, and we all know about that in the press, and we do not know the rest. Now, it is definitely a painful decision for the business to make, to pay or not to pay the ransom. The pandemic has educated the business to keep pace with the threat landscape. Some company even accelerated their cybersecurity controls initiative. A question they would normally like to ask at this stage would be, did we take it for granted or we miss something along the way when it comes to designing our defense and assessing our risk profile? Let me explain Black Swan. Now, a black swan is an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a situation and has potentially severe consequences. I will use the Shell company incident as a black swan. They had the opportunity to review their security posture after all the cyber attacks in the last 12 months and take the opportunity to strengthen their cyber defense. Unfortunately, the bad guys were ahead of their effort. A lesson learned from all the incidents indicate we should minimally adopt a general rule of thumb to isolate all our networks if possible. Isolated also means defended. Now, the organization must reassess their risk profile whenever there is a change in the threat landscape. Splitting your network into segments and isolating them creates a barrier from being fully compromised with one blow. However, do not forget to observe the principle of least privilege. Now, organization must also have a patch management routine and well-established processes. At this junction, however, some companies are not diligent and complacent in their patch management and tends to give the business the false sense of security. The past lessons of cybersecurity incidents seems not to leave an impact on organizations to review their security posture and let alone to reassess their risk profile. Again, if you ask a simple question, did we take it for granted or did we not remember when it comes to designing our defense and reassessing our risk profile? So it all boils down to how we prepare ourselves to achieve a safe and secure environment to live and work. The word target here means to have a risk assessment that is relevant to the organization. The organization needs to put focus on the critical assets that need to be protected and work on. At least we will have some hope securing the assets and organization as a whole. The methodology needs to be consistent and repeatable. The security end states needs to be defined based on the risk appetite. Also important to have an easy report for our strategy to understand and implement. We need to adopt a pessimistic approach when doing risk assessment. For example, you look at the slide, half empty, which is a bit more pessimistic versus half full, a bit more optimistic. Now, the idea here is to list all the threats affecting your environment and find a countermeasure for each threat. Don't guess or look outside the scope. I call this asset-based approach in a pessimistic way. Visualization using fishbone or mind map will definitely help you to see a better risk model. SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats is a good way to start. The first impact perspective, always ensure no irrelevant threats will be highlighted and no time wasted in designing countermeasures that adds no value, which potentially can mislead the team business, and it can also give the business a false sense of security. Now, all this sounds very fundamental, but yet I'm still seeing it in real life. Not sure how many of you have experienced this. I'm equally guilty of it. Always excited to share the risk assessment to the management, but neglected the needs of the business. The management prefers short and sharp updates, especially at the board level. Take a step back, stay focused, gather your thoughts, and present it simple and short form. Put yourself in the shoe of the recipient for a start. Imagine this is a company board meeting, and basically, we'll just need this to straight to the point. During the course of a risk-based approach, we need to focus on the high impact scenarios regardless of the likelihood of occurrence. Here we are referring to high impact, high likelihood, right, and high impact, low likelihood. An example of high impact and low likelihood would be losing electrical power in a rail system. Most rail systems would have a backup electrical power system, but we still see rail disruption due to power failures. An example of high impact, high likelihood would be an attack group targeting critical information infrastructure. Example like the Colonial Pipeline oil. Right. Adopting this high impact scenario approach will give us a more accurate appreciation of the risk assessment. A complicated risk model does not mean more professional or more technical knowledge. Having technical know-how is a blessing, but sometimes we can end up with overwhelming outputs. Many of us will end up deviating from the intended outcome. Keep it simple. Divide the problem into manageable chunks and explain in layman terms like CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, let me take the opportunity here to introduce a model that I created called the CIA, SAM, and AAA. This is the CIA, SAM, AAA model for risk management that I adopt in my course of work. SAM stands for the safety, availability, and maintenance. AAA here refers to the authentication, authorization, and auditing. Now, we always start with the CIA followed by the triple A's, and this is primarily for the IT systems. We will consider safety and maintainability when dealing with operation technology, or also known as OT. Now, safety is the primary driver, while cyber is the secondary driver. Yeah. I would suggest we all go back to a drawing board if we can and relook at how we approach risk assessment. Now, I personally adopt responsive security in my course of work. Uh, Visibility is an important aspect of situation awareness, and important steps in managing uncertainties is to provide visibility so that it can be recognized. Having cyber visibility, and this I mean understands the technology and trends of cyber attacks. Security monitoring and a good source of cyber threat intelligence, also known as a CTI, is key as it will give you the necessary situation awareness of your industries. Now, CTI can be subjective, and it is good to have at least two different sources for check and balance reasons. Next is to know and plan our critical resources, people, process, and technology. There must be continuity to ensure nothing drops along the way. A key call out here is the criticality alignment, which establishes a common focal point between the incident response team and business management that will help resolve disagreements about critical risk issues facing an organization. Now, this approach addresses a common shortcoming in traditional risk management. Most importantly, trust is a key component of the responsive approach. Responsive does not mean waiting for something to happen. Instead of dealing with the information risk proactively, responsive approach is not reactive. Ideally, we'll target to stop or block an attack at its initial phase. If we miss the initial phase, we will still be able to recover based on business continuity strategy. Now, keeping in line with our critical resources, we also need to know what we have in our technology as state of systems. Now, Murphy's law states to expect the unexpected, which is very true in the cyberspace. Therefore, prepare for failure. Right? Failures can come from any combination of components, and what can go wrong will definitely go wrong. Now, a security team must try to understand how critical systems fail and to use the failure model and effect analysis to identify potential triggering failure events that will require criticality alignment. Plan a strategy or countermeasures for the combination of failures. I call this variable component failure analysis. Always remember, when you fail to plan, you basically plan to fail. I use the double look feedback approach when I conduct my failure analysis. Now, double look learning based on macro changes within and external to the systems are necessary to ensure that the governing variables and assumptions are challenged and updated. It can be a simple exercise to understand the combination and permutation for a start, but it can become complex as the project grows. Use the CIA model to help you stay focused. You can add attributes like safety and maintainability in different operating environments when conducting the failure analysis. I've come to the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening, and I will answer questions if there are any.